So I'm sure all of you by now that have clicked on this video know what Cam Newton said earlier this week to that, I believe, Charlotte Observer, a female Carolina Panthers beat reporter. Admittedly, not the best look. Can't say that it is. But of course, with what happened and the question that she asked and the way that Cam Newton responded in kind of like that condescending, dismissive, really frankly, sexist kind of manner, you had to know the response was going to be swift, it was going to be consistent, and it was going to be very big. Never mind that in this world there seem to be so many more pressing issues, things that are important that actually really impact people's lives that we could be focusing on, we could be talking about, we could be getting to trend via social media. It's this type of hot, sensationalistic garbage that dominates our society, dominates our media, dominates social media. Not a surprise, it's just disappointing and ultimately a reflection of who we are as a people, and newsflash, it's not a good one. Now, a lot of, obviously, female journalists and female reporters in the sports world took great umbrage and great acceptance to this, and that's fine, and it's understandable because this comes down to the fundamental issue that they've had to deal with throughout their entire careers about you don't belong here, you don't deserve to be here, you're a woman, what the hell would you know, get back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich, and bah, 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 bah. With that said, though, I really don't feel a lot of sympathy for this specific beat reporter, especially with some of her racist tweets from the past that you can look up, but more so the notion that so many of these women in journalism are always kept down and always have to battle over this and have to work so much harder. That's just a complete load of crap. It is. I'm sorry. And we as guys, we know it because we can see it. And some women know it too, and some women are open enough to see it. There are a lot of women that are able to get into sports journalism, get into positions as reporters, yes, even print media, but especially via video media like the internet and television and what have you. They specifically get their roles in part because they are women, in part because sexuality sells, and in large part due to not their talents or their skills as a reporter, but ultimately how they look and how much sizzle they bring to the platter. It's exactly that. Because you could turn on any number of sports shows and you see this woman here or this woman here and you're like, okay, she's talented, she's really annoying, you could clearly understand why this one has their gig. It's kind of like the Fox Newsization of sports media. Put these women out there based off of how they look, and that it is what happens. And don't give me that crap that it doesn't, because it does. So all these women that are going to sit there and complain so much about how all of these things about them are questioned, about how they have to overcome this. On the flip side, there are many of them in the industry who get tremendous benefits because of their gender, because sex sells. It's that simple. And if you're going to get that upset and that butthurt about this one thing, then maybe, just maybe, get out of the business. And move aside for another male or especially female reporter that is actually talented enough to get over based off of their skills, not off of their tit size. For the guys in the sports media that quickly took Cam to task, it's just, again, it's always one of those cynical things I say. Just because you defend the female reporters doesn't mean they're going to screw you. And sure, that's just me kind of being ridiculous. Although for some of them, it's one of those things, I secretly have a crush and I want to stand out and I want to make sure she knows I defended her so that way maybe someday we can get in a situation, a couple of drinks, big bag moon, one thing leads to another, and splat out, cream pie right in the vag patch. There are some guys that think like that, even if it's subconsciously. But for some of these guys, man, I understand not wanting to come across as sexist pigs, but stop being wusses too. I mean, there are multiple ways to approach this, but the way that I saw on social media and different websites, so many of these male sports reporters approach this, I'm like, oh, give me a freaking break. Who's the feminazi here? And on the one hand, The question that the female reporter asked, who names escapes me at the moment and really frankly doesn't matter for this conversation, it wasn't like it was a good question. It wasn't like it was worded well. I mean, we could have been questioning that. You could sit there and question why Cam felt the need to say what he said and talk about it kind of feeds into a long-standing narrative about him fair or not. It's a combination of the two. That's valid. But I think focusing so much on what he said to somebody because she was a woman takes away from the bigger issue here. And there is a bigger issue here, at least the way I see it. And a lot of you aren't going to agree, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. If you want to make it about equality for women and you want to make it about the way he talked to women and that he's sexist and all that, fine. I'm not going to do anything to change you. And there's a part of that that's true. And honestly, from a lot of guys' standpoints, even some of the ones that you'll see on social media quick to defend the women of the world and quick to show their skills as a male Nazi, which is basically a male feminazi, the fact is a lot of guys feel somewhat similar to Cam Newton. And there's something to be said about you never actually played the sport. It would have been impossible for you to play the sport at the NFL level or at the major Division I level. What the hell would you know about a route? What the hell would you know about a quarterback? And that's a valid question. Just like it's a valid question for me and it's a valid question for thousands upon thousands of people that do videos about the NFL and other sports and write about it and talk about it on television. It is a valid, fair question. Not just women, but men too. If you haven't done it, what the hell would you know? But therein lies the fundamental flaw with the argument. And what I think is really, truly the most ridiculous thing about what Cam Newton said and what it represents. This whole notion that in order for you to know about it, you had to have done it yourself. And if you haven't, there's no way you could know. This is just complete and total unmitigated crap that just does not match the reality of our world. It's so similar to what I hear for those of you that follow my professional wrestling channel on here. I talk about so often how the real marks are the ones inside of the business, but even more so, this fundamentally flawed belief that you had to have been a worker in the business to understand and know the business is complete crap, because you could take a look out from the outside as a customer and say, this is good, this is not. Don't tell me it's good when your arenas are half empty, or the arenas that you perform in are a fifth of the size that they were a decade ago. Ding dong, dumb dick, there is something fundamentally wrong here. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist, a brain surgeon, or a former professional wrestler to be able to see that something is afoot. Furthermore, when you just look at other areas of our society, do you need to be a great griller yourself to know if that steak that you had at that steakhouse that was expensive as hell was any damn good or not? No, absolutely not. That is completely and totally ridiculous. You don't need to know all the inner workings of how the steak was made. You don't need to know how to make the steak yourself in order to know whether the steak is any good or not, or even have an opinion about why it was good or why it was not good. It's ridiculous. You don't have to be an actor or director or writer to know whether you thought a movie was good or not and be able to explain or quantify why you thought a movie was good or not. Same thing for television shows. There's just this fundamental insecurity amongst athletes and the world of athletes in general that they get so defensive. And I understand there's a lot of pressure there, and I understand there are always people gunning for your jobs. There are people always trying to make you look bad. The media at times, depending on who you are, can seem like they're trying to tear you down. But that's life. That's tough. And that's the way it's going to be. Being insecure about it just shows how weak you are in your confidence in yourself and your own abilities. You shouldn't have to question others in their opinion just because they didn't do it. You're already better than them because you make a shit ton of money to play a kid's game. But this would be like saying you can't have an opinion on the president or Congress or any matters of a political nature if you've never been in politics before or you've never held a job at that level before. How ridiculous could that be that the only people in the entire universe that could have an opinion on President Trump, for example, would be the remaining living presidents, the two Bushes, Jimmy Carter, Obama, Clinton. based off of the logic that Cam and so many other athletes use, they would be the only people fundamentally equipped to be able to judge whether or not the current president is doing a good job or not. So all the people that go out there and bitch about everything Donald Trump does, or the people that go out there and sheepishly defend everything Donald Trump does, based off of athlete logic, you're all morons and you have no business, no place talking about any of that. And that's just completely and totally ridiculous. This would be the same thing as saying you can't have an opinion on a war if you were never actually a soldier yourself. You can't have an opinion on a school system or your kid's education if you were never a teacher, a superintendent, an administrator, a school board member, PTA member yourself. And I could go on and on and on. So as much as I thought that the reporter's question was kind of weird and dumb, not very well put, I did think Cam's answer was dumb and really bad. But it goes outside of the bounds of just being about gender and just being about sex. Because from my standpoint, and again, this is just my standpoint, is if I did the exact same videos, maybe in a slightly different way, but if I did the exact same videos and I was born a woman and I looked at least adequate to average, if not better, but even adequate to average, and I had a rack, I would have 10 times the viewership that I do. That is a fact. And you can see so many women on here that talk about different things, sports or whatever. A major reason they have the audience that they do is because not only do women like to watch it, but a lot of horny men do too. So for women like her as a young beat reporter, I feel absolutely no sympathy. You got the type of job that I could only wish to have or dream to have and never would have, because individuals like yourself who may or may not be equipped from a talent standpoint to actually have merited to deserve that job, got that job for a variety of different factors and quotas that have to be met. And you can say, well, that's print media, don't be ridiculous. Well, it could still apply to print media, because male bosses still are going to want to look at the employees and they're going to want to look at something that is pleasing to them. So don't give me that crap that just because they're not on internet videos or on television that the looks don't matter. The point I'm getting at is you just don't see a lot of ugly bitches, like truly ugly bitches, get into sports media and make it big. You just don't. You just don't. And we all damn good and well know why. Now, in terms of female reporters, you know, I grew up for years on Hannah Storm. I enjoy her work as much as anybody else's, male or female, doesn't matter. I've always felt Rachel Nichols was really, really talented. I'll defend Doris Burke to this day. And the next time Greg Popovich pops off to her, I think the entire country wants to join along with me for smacking him upside his fucked up face. How dare you do that to Doris Burke? She is a saint, damn you, a saint! But the fundamental issue here to me is in what Cam Newton said. People will focus on the sexism part of that. And sure, there was. It clearly was. And I won't deny that. Because there was. But it's, again, representative of a much bigger problem. Is Cam and athletes like Cam saying that if you've never played, you don't know. And how ridiculous is that? I don't recall Bill Belichick ever being a major star in the National Football League level, and he's the greatest NFL head coach of all time. Yeah, Vince Lombardi, going back in history, was a part of the 7 blocks of granite at Fordham, but he wasn't exactly an NFL star, and he is the second greatest coach of all time who had the freaking Super Bowl trophy named after him. My Chicago Cubs are ultimately run by a guy in Theo Epstein who was never a Major League Baseball player. He was an Ivy League educated guy, or wherever the hell he went to school, who believed in sabermetrics. And he turned around 2 of the worst organizations in the history of Major League Baseball and made them into contenders. But based off of what somebody like Cam Newton would believe in, and that's athletes across the board and coaches and so on and so forth, Theo Epstein should have never had his job. And how completely and totally ridiculous is that? What Cam Newton said was stupid and dumb on so many different levels. The sexism part was just one of it. But to me, it represents even more, and it's more about the dismissiveness and ultimately the insecurity of these big baby athletes.